Welcome to Conversations with Barbara. I'm Barbara Kanellopoulos, and I'm here today with Alan Russell, who is the Production and Education Coordinator for Falmouth Community Television. Alan and I are going to discuss a serious problem, and I'll turn to you, Alan, as a teacher of media literacy. Maybe you can help us out with this. We have all kinds of access to wonderful information today. It is the information age, but it's getting harder and harder to know whether that information is correct. Do you agree that this is a serious problem?
Oh, absolutely. Excuse me. In fact, the World Health Organization has declared this time to be an infodemic because of all the misinformation out there, especially surrounding the coronavirus.
Really?
So there's so much information and misinformation coming out at the same time that it gets confusing to people. And a lot of this is about what we call a fire hose of falsehood, where you kind of, this has been the Russian technique for, many years, where you just, it's blatant lies a lot of the time, like garlic can cure the coronavirus. I don't know if you've heard this one.
Good grief.
Oh, yes. But, you're just putting out so much stuff that people begin to question what is truth.
Yes, you know what worries me about that. If people become so confused, they may withdraw altogether. Voters may say, well, this is so chaotic, I just don't care anymore. And we don't want that ever to happen because a democracy depends upon voters.
Right. And it's really our civic duty as, to be an informed electorate. And in order to be, accurately informed, unfortunately, it falls to the, each individual to go back and fact check all of these statements because no one else is going to do it for us.
I see. Yeah, give us some techniques for fact checking. What should we be alert to?
So the first thing you want to notice is a lot of the misinformation out there is built to cause anxiety or to cause you to enter some sort of panic mode. So you should be aware of that. If something plays on your fears or your anxieties, it's obviously going to be somewhat biased there. Real news shouldn't play up, anxieties and fears like that. So you want to be aware of that, and try and exit that sort of that state of mind and analyze the article a little bit.
I have heard that people tend to believe what is very dramatic or the crazier, the more believable. Is that true?
That is absolutely true. That's what we found. People, once again, with the, garlic curing the coronavirus, France had to put out an actual statement from the government that cocaine does not cure the coronavirus.
Oh.
I mean, you would think some of these things would be, self-obvious, but a big thing taking hold around the world is even that 5G causes the coronavirus, which you may know is not even been implemented in many places around the world, and yet we see this, pandemic playing out worldwide. So it doesn't take, a lot of fact checking in these instances even to prove that it's false.
I see.
It's just there's so much of it out there.
I see. So what is the difference between disinformation and misinformation?
So misinformation is going to be more editorial opinion. It's not necessarily meant to inform people wrongly, whereas disinformation actually is actively trying to persuade someone.
I see.
Yes. So,
then I see.
So a lot of the stuff that we see now is actually more misinformation. People that are ill-informed and they just continue to pass on all of this information without, double checking it first. So one thing that you can do, every single person can do, is rather than just clicking that share button the second you see something sensational on the internet, and you have to share it with all your family and friends, take a second and just make sure that it's true before you send it out.
I see. So it's the spreading of that kind of false information that makes it more dangerous. Yes,
Exactly.
yes, that's so interesting because deception is ancient. This is how generals have won battles in the past.
Oh, absolutely.
It's the fact that this deception is disseminated so widely and so quickly that it's so dangerous.
Yes, and nowadays it's so much easier to spread this information in our social media age, and that's why it really falls on a lot of these companies to take responsibility for it. In my opinion, and that's why companies like Twitter have actually stepped up and actively banned and deleted posts with misinformation about the coronavirus. It's up to other companies to step up and follow their example.
Yes, I've heard that Facebook hasn't done enough, but it's good that Twitter has. That's at least a step in the right direction. So you say that first of all we should double check that if the information makes us worried and anxious,
right,
then stop and think. And then the next thing is don't quickly spread it on to somebody else. Yeah, the tendency to do that, I suppose, is because it is dramatic news and you want to let your friends in on it. But you're suggesting that we not do that.
Right. And, that's been a problem with the newsroom, and journalism for a long time is, you want to be first. You want to get the breaking news out there.
Yes.
You don't want to be the third person to tell your friend that new joke, right?
Oh,
exactly. You want them to hear it from you first.
So, yes, so that this is really so interesting because this disinformation is based on attributes we all have. We're very human, and so that makes us even more vulnerable. Not only humans in a democracy, but we have this tendency to want to spread news to people, word of mouth sort of thing.
Exactly, because we're such an we're so used to oral histories and passing stories on.
Yes, yes.
So another thing that you can do is everybody's passing on memes, right? But memes contain no sources. They're almost always made up. So you can never trust a meme. So
give us an example of a meme for those who.
A lot of memes out there about people wearing masks or not wearing masks out there are either pulled from other photos. So I actually saw one in Britain that's causing a big problem lately about this couple that someone photo manipulated their image that they had sold off to a, you can subscribe to these photo services.
Yes.
And you can just buy images of people on it. And someone photoshopped sunburns with little, mask tan lines to show that this family had been vacationing with their masks on and hated the tan lines.
So those are things, graphic urban legends kind of things.
So people are, just making these things up. And yet this family, whose vacation photo it was, is getting all these calls and from all these upset people about why they would make a, and it's a picture of them from 20 years ago. So
I see. So we have that to be, so things like that are called memes we should not pass on.
Right. Oftentimes we pass them on because they're funny or something like that. But we do have to, acknowledge at the same time that what we're doing is we're spreading misinformation.
And hurting someone who has been with Photoshop. Yes, that should make us think twice because ultimately it comes back to that person who's been whose picture's been manipulated.
Right.
And so there, yes, that's very important. Yes, well, continue. What else can we do? Oh, I know that sometimes our own bias gets us in the way.
Yes.
Let's say if psychologists for years said that we tend to believe what we want to believe and find what we want to find. So we have our own bias that stands in the way.
Yeah, it's called a confirmation bias. And so we tend to seek out things that confirm what we already know. You know, so, you know, if we supposedly know the earth is flat, there's nothing that, you know, anybody could do to convince us otherwise, even sending us into space, you know, oh, the earth is flat or whatever, right? When the rest of us all know better. But they'll actively seek out their own community. And online, companies like Facebook have made this a lot easier, where they only show you posts that are going to, you know, get you to click on and stay on their platform longer, which makes these companies more money. That's what they want. So they're encouraged to keep this confirmation bias going. And the biggest problem that we've seen with this is that it's promoting racism and bigotry all around the world, especially against Chinese people and people of Asian descent because of the coronavirus. You know, you hear lots of people out there calling it the Chinese virus, and all sorts of other racist events, you know, have naturally followed this dog whistle that we allow here in our society.
That is so unfair. That's really unfair. We really must think twice about it. Gets embedded in the language. It's a pandemic. It is not necessarily said. And I think that as the information is coming out, we're finding out more and more about its origins.
Mm-hmm.
So I suppose in the absence of solid information, this is still very new. We have lots to learn about the coronavirus. I suppose in that vacuum, lots of false news gets promoted because there's so much we don't know.
Absolutely. So, you know, you even look at the, you know, supposed wonder cure hydroxychloroquine that seems to be promoted everywhere all of a sudden. And it makes you wonder who owns stock in that company, right? But the, you know, what we should actually be waiting for is, does the FDA say it's safe? You know, you need to be hearing about this from medical doctors. And the FCC has actually recently been challenged on this point, because they should be stepping in to protect, you know, this misinformation being spread across our airways. That's what their job is. However, in their ruling, they say they do not, cannot, and will not act as an arbiter of truth in journalism. They say false speech enjoys some First Amendment protection, and they trust the American public and their ability to differentiate between medical advice and political opinion, which it's tough to do sometimes when you see, you know, the president up there surrounded by a team of doctors and no one steps up to say that these drugs aren't approved yet, which has actually led to the death of an Arizona man who decided to take some of this drug. But
it seems to me that ruling is really questionable, because our freedom of speech, remember the classical, we don't have the right to shout fire in a crowded theater?
Right.
So that needs to be looked at again. That seems to me philosophically unsound, that FCC ruling.
Absolutely. You know, they said that there was not enough provable harm from these particular cases yet. But I think the coronavirus is still spreading. You know, we see this especially with the reopen protests that are really just astroturfing.
Explain astroturfing for viewers. What,
So
what,
essentially, astroturfing is when a company or politician or political organization attempts to make something look like a grassroots protest or something along those lines. So we saw this very effectively done against the healthcare program under Obama, with the Koch brothers founding the Tea Party,
yes, yes,
and that was very effective. And now the same parties are getting involved in funding this whole reopen protest, and we're seeing spikes in cases immediately following these protests in each state.
let's see. Yes, and the reason why they're doing this astroturfing is because it of getting the economy going again will benefit their businesses.
Exactly.
And yeah, everyone wants to get back to normal, but not at the cost of human lives.
Right. And you know, when we're talking that we've lost over 40,000 Americans already,
Yes,
and
yes,
the cost of reopening, as we've seen in many other countries that have reopened too early, is that they get a whole second wave of coronavirus. You know, New York has just sent away the naval ship because they've finally beaten the crest of the virus in New York City, and you know, we want to see that all across the country. But if we
right,
reopen too soon, we're just going to get hit all over again and have to close even longer next time.
yes. I think our governor in Massachusetts is taking the right steps. And so, and can you also explain something else, another term that has come up with this disinformation campaign, the word bot. What is a bot?
Oh,
B-O-T.
a bot. Yes. So a lot of what we consider the misinformation campaign is actually these AI server farms over. A lot of them are in Russia. And you can actually track a lot of bot activity. There's a ton of websites out there. If you go to companies like Rand, they actually have a number of bot trackers out there, so you can detect whether what you're reading is from a bot. But basically, what it is someone feeds a bot what to say, and then thousands of accounts all across the internet send this information out. And so
I,
it looks like thousands of people are doing this when
oh,
it's one person in their bedroom.
it's all, oh, that's astounding.
Yep.
The power of the internet. That is incredible and so dangerous. And isn't this what happened when with the Russian interference in 2016?
So
And
that's exactly what the Senate Intelligence Committee just confirmed recently, is that this is exactly the Russian model for propaganda that they did to help Donald Trump in the 2016 election, and they're currently doing all around the world, not just here in America, but it's only intensified since the coronavirus to help spread misinformation and really create chaos around the world.
yes, and one can understand why that would benefit a foreign country, because the more chaos, the easier it is to really create, disrupt a government and its workings. So
And that's exactly what they're trying to do. To weaken all the other powers in the world, so that they're, once again the world superpower.
yes, yes. So we have another word in our vocabulary: info war. It's
Yes.
really, yeah, yes, that's very sad. The now what's coming up is the when we get back to normal, the election in 2020 next November. So we're going to be seeing tons of this disinformation.
Absolutely.
So,
And a lot of it, you're going to have to take with a grain of salt, especially political ads. We all know that they tend to not always be as truthful as they should be, especially considering that we want to elect these people. We should probably grade them on their honesty. but that's not what people go for. A lot of times, going back to that fire hose of falsehood, the more lies you put out there, the harder it is to tell what the truth is. So,
Yes.
by never admitting fault, or saying that you were wrong, you never have to be to your supporters.
Do you think that this is worrying some people, that this is an assault on truth, and that maybe we will become, as human beings, a little too careless about the truth? Or do you think that we can overcome this? I guess what I'm saying is this going to be a new kind of behavior that we're just getting used to, where we're just going to wind up always distrusting each other?
Well, I like to think of myself as a bit of an optimist here, and I think this is something that if we work at it, we can overcome. A lot of people say that we're living in a post-truth age, where the truth is what you make it or what you print, and it no longer matters what the actual truth is. But I'm giving a lot of hope if we can start teaching digital literacy in our schools, and get more people to become aware of all of this misinformation and how to analyze it and recognize it. I think we can eventually move past it. But it's going to require that we're all vigilant all the time. And I don't know that that's for everyone. There are certain people out there that would rather not look further into reading more into anything. They're certainly there for the entertainment, but less for the truth.
Yes. So, well, I'm encouraged by what you said too, that we can become critical thinkers, more critical than we've ever been, without becoming jaded. We should become critical. And then let's hope that more schools will have courses in media literacy and critical thinking, because young people really need to have this. They're our future. And so being able to look dispassionately at information and do what you've suggested. Let's go review that again. First of all, if it's so the kind of news that alarms you, that makes you nervous and excited and anxious, then stop and question the truth of it. Maybe it's probably false, right?
And then you want to check the source, so that you make sure that you're getting it from a legitimate source.
Yes.
You don't want to just trust anybody and wherever it came from. Beware of memes. You don't want to just take them at face value. Oftentimes they're incorrect or contain all sorts of misinformation.
Yes.
Not to mention they're hurtful for some people.
Yeah, and even if the meme is funny, don't pass it on, because eventually it hurts somebody.
Exactly.
Who's bad enough.
And then if you're unsure, don't spread it. In order to eliminate all this misinformation, it's really up to us, because the bots and the propaganda machines, they're going to be out there. But if we don't actively spread it, we can limit the contagion. So just like with Corona, we're social distancing. We need to do the same thing with our information.
That really is a great analogy. This is like a disease. Disinformation, fake news is like a disease, and we spread it, and it's infectious because we want to be the first one to tell our friends the news. And so we really need to resist it. We need to distance ourselves from what we know to be false news. That's the message, I think, and I'm certainly going to take it very seriously, and I hope everyone else does. And the other thing we want to say is that since we have a bias toward, we want to believe news that fits what we already know, we want to be even careful about judging that kind of news, making sure that even news that we think is friendly is correct.
Right. You especially want to be wary of that.
Oh,
Because that is, oftentimes what is going to be false is stuff that you just don't even question.
yes, that's right. So we just have to be alert.
Mhm.
So what else have you heard? Let's go back a bit to that the false news about the coronavirus. That ultimately can be so dangerous because people are checking the news every day to get the next bit of information, and if they hear something that says to them you don't have to wear a mask, that can be very dangerous. So
Right.
really,
And so the best place to get all this information, once again, is from the CDC directly. And each state has done their own rules about this. So, for example, if you go out in the state of New York, you are required to wear a face mask anywhere in public. You're not yet required to do so here in Massachusetts, but it is recommended by the governor and the CDC anywhere you go. So each place kind of has its own rules, but for the official rules, you always want to check the CDC in your own state to stay up to date on all of this. And I understand it's a lot. Some stations have actually taken to not airing anything live anymore, so that they can fact check things in advance before it goes on the air, which is really interesting take on this. Because the information that we're getting is from the supposed experts, right? So why should we have to fact check all these briefings before we put it out to the public? And that's because a lot of it is actually political opinion rather than medical advice. And so once again, with the FCC saying that's up to us to, decide between which is which, it's nice to see that some news organizations are actually trying to help with that.
Yes, that's a great help and very good to know. It's encouraging that they're recognizing that it's dangerous to put out things that are not accurate. So this is really very important. It's got me thinking. Do you remember George Orwell's book 1984?
Yes.
It's almost as if it was written in 1949, I think sometimes that we are living in that same dystopia that he wrote about. And what's interesting to me is that the techniques that you've just discussed, bots, disinformation, astroturfing, those are techniques that totalitarian countries have always used to control the thinking of people, to control their thoughts. We must never let that happen. And so I would agree with you that we just have to be vigilant.
Yeah, and it really, the part of 1984 that this really reminds me of is, how there were the mandatory broadcasts that you couldn't shut off of fighting the invisible enemy, right? And what better metaphor for what we're doing right now? These mandatory briefings that we're all, sit here watching every day, just to see what's the newest thing today with the virus. It feels very similar.
It does. I mean, one thinks about how prescient George Orwell was. But of course, he of course saw all those tendencies in 1949. It wasn't something that he just imagined. He just knew how to put it together in an art form to make it seem so real. And here it is with us.
Well, he actually was actively part of the misinformation campaign of World War II. you know, working against the Germans there. And so you
Yes.
see what some of the early Russian propaganda was as well. And so I think he was able to draw a lot from that. And that's kind of what our modern state has been built on, is everything coming out of World War II and the Cold War. So, you know, he was right there on the front lines of it. So he saw it a little before the rest of us.
Yes, that's very interesting. Thank you for telling me about that too. So deception is nothing new, except when it's weaponized, it can be really, really troublesome. So then I hope viewers will take this to heart and be very suspicious of the news that comes in, making sure that you know the correct source, and let's hope that we will get through all of this. I'm sure that we will get through this pandemic altogether and happily. And so I think I want to thank you so much for giving us this vital information. And we may want to do another program about this as things move on, and we'll see whether or not there are even more examples that we want to talk about and analyze. Thank you, Ellen, very, very much.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Barbara.
Right. And thank you all for tuning in. We'll look forward to seeing you next time on Conversations with Barbara.